Hello Brian, this is Mashnu, and we're going to have a look at the game that you sent me. But before we go into the moves that were made, I would like to talk about this topic that you mentioned, how to stay calm when you get into time trouble. I think this is a universal problem for all chess players. You see, what happens is that when we are in danger, our body and our mind, our whole mechanism, reacts in a way that is meant to make us aware and be ready for action. It's actually the same mechanism that happens in time trouble and also in real danger situations. Yeah, for example, if you see someone aggressive coming towards you, your body reacts in the same way. Your heart starts pumping very fast and adrenaline is being produced in your body, and the meaning of this is to prepare you to fight or to run away. That's the way that let's say the survival system that we got. Now this alarm system also happens when we play chess. Also then we sense danger at the moment that we don't have much time on the clock, and our body reacts exactly in the same way. Our heart rate goes up, it starts pumping the blood, and adrenaline is being produced, so you feel a bit shaky sometimes, nervous, and it becomes sometimes a bit difficult to concentrate. Now, why is this system not working in our favor? We would think that if this is our alarm system, it's meant to help us and not to work against us. Well, the thing is that let's say that this alarm system that we have is not very well tuned. Most people, what happens is that when we sense danger, this mechanism starts working very hard, so hard that too much adrenaline is being produced, and we get too much tension, and that's why it blocks us. It blocks our thinking, and it sometimes even it can block our body in situations of real danger. Many people experience that they freeze. They cannot move their legs. They are not allowed. They're not able to think clearly. Sometimes even they are just like there is no thought at all, and because of that they cannot make a decision what to do. It can be very fearful to experience that. Now in chess, something similar happens, that the amount of stress gets so high that we don't see things, basic threats, for example, that we normally would see. So this means that this very friendly and useful system that we have, this alarm system, works a bit too hard. So we need to diminish it. And to do that, there are techniques. One of them I explained in a video that I made, and it's on YouTube. I believe that I entitled the video "The Great Technique of Anchoring." If you just do a chess on YouTube, Mashnu 2006 anchoring, then you'll find the video. It's a very useful exercise that can help you not only in chess but also in many situations when you want to feel confident and in control of yourself and the situation around you. Well, actually the best advice given is, of course, not to get into time trouble, but that's something that even, well, actually everybody knows it, but still we get into time trouble sometimes. Time management is important during the chess game. It's not only about the moves, it's also about time. That's also a part of chess. So managing our time and preventing time trouble is something, of course, very advisable. Another thing that is important is to make use of the thinking time of the opponent, in the sense that when it's not your turn to move but your opponent's turn to move, you can already prepare for his answer, and you can already also think about what are the simple threats, the simple dangers in the position that you must be aware of. Of course, besides this, there are many other techniques like well, that can help you calm down, like yoga and meditation and things like that. I know for sure that many grandmasters also practice these techniques, um, like Anand, the former world champion. He practices meditation and yoga, and well, I think it's very helpful. If it helps you, do it. If it doesn't help you, if it doesn't work for you, then drop it. That's actually the thing to do with all techniques. Alright, enough said about this. Let's go to the game now. You were playing white here and you played e4. Your opponent answers d6. You play d4, controlling the center, knight f6. This looks like the Pyrrhic defense, but your opponent has a surprise. After knight to c3, he doesn't play g6, that's the most played move, and he also doesn't play e5, but he plays c6. Less popular, but it could be a transposition. It could be that if you play knight f3 or f4, he's going to play g6 at some point. But that's not what happened in the game. You played bishop e2, a very flexible move, since it keeps open all the options for the f-pawn. You can play f4 after this, you can play f3, you can play knight f3. Now your opponent asks queen to c7. It looks like he's preparing to play e5 at some point and wants to have enough support there. Queen on c7 also makes the square d8 available for a rook eventually. Your reaction is very healthy, developing your pieces, and now he plays bishop to g4, and you answer now h3. Questioning this bishop, does black want to retreat to h5 or does he want to take on f3? Well, both moves are possible. He takes on f3. This means that after retaking, like you did, you have a pair of bishops. Now a pair of bishops is an advantage if the position gets open. If the center is closed, then often a pair of bishops doesn't have enough space to move and maneuver. But let's have a look how the game continued. Now he plays e6. You go bishop e3, and he plays bishop e7. Now all these pieces, these black pieces, are there in the three ranks, the 8th, 7th and 6th rank, and it looks like your opponent is one of those who says, wait a minute, I'm going to play very solid and very safe and persuade my opponent to attack, and if he makes a mistake in the attack, then I'm going to strike back. It's a way of playing. It's not the way of playing that I like the most. I like most being active immediately. But well, players like your opponent sometimes have success with this this tactic, this way of playing. You play now queen to d2, a nice move because it gives you the option of castling queenside or castling kingside if you like. It's still very flexible. Now he castles kingside. So we have now certainty about where his king is going to be. And for this reason you continue with g4, starting a pawn storm on the king side. Now let me return this move, because another possibility would be to castle queenside immediately. Now perhaps you were worried that he would start an attack on the queen side then, but actually that's the normal thing that happens in this type of positions. Black starts something like b5 and you are going to start an attack on this side and perhaps play a rook to g1 and advance g4, g5 as well, h5. That's the thing that we mostly see in this type of positions. And the good thing about castling early this castling queenside is that both your rooks are connected. Not only a rook in the center, but also a rook that can be brought to the king side as well to support the attack. Now let's return, because g4 is also a very direct way of attacking. By the way, it's always the question whether you want to push the g pawn first or the h pawn. Pushing the h pawn is also something that we see a lot, not only in this position, but actually in this type of setups with queen on d2, bishop on e3. We see the h pawn advancing with the idea of advancing it towards h6 and then forcing black to make a decision to advance the g pawn or to allow white to take. On g7 mostly they play g6 and then the dark squares get a bit weak, so there are some ideas there for the attack. Well, you choose to play g4 and now he plays d5, opening a diagonal here that becomes very interesting for your bishop, so you play bishop to f4. Another option again would be to castle queenside and then continue with g5, for example, g5 and h4. But bishop f4 is also, well, it's winning a tempo. It looks like it's winning a tempo. The only thing is that the queen goes to a5, and I find that this queen on a5 is better placed than it was on c7. Because black can go later bishop to b4, having a kind of a battery here on this this pin, this diagonal. So I'm not very sure if bishop f4 it activates your bishop. It does, yes, but I'm not sure if we combine it with the next question, the next move that you made, e5, if it has been very useful, bishop f4. Because in fact, if we compare this position with the position before bishop f4, that's this one, we can say that after these two moves, bishop f4 and e5, his queen has been well placed here and your bishop is looking at his own pawn. The center is being closed, so then these two bishops are not very active. Still, I think the position is more or less equal. He plays knight f to d7 here, and now you play queen to d3. I don't, well, perhaps your idea was queen d3 and then retreating the bishop to d2 so you can move the knight away attacking the queen, something like that, or I don't know, but I don't really like this move. The thing is that it actually invites black to play c5, and your opponent didn't play this, but I think that this would be a very good move for black. And after this he can play knight to c6. How to react to this? If you continue with this idea, you can go queen b6, knight a4, but doesn't really achieve much, I think. The problem with this c5 move that your opponent did is that if we take here on c5 at some point, the e5 pawn will be undefended, and there is a knight ready to take there on e5, so it looks a bit dangerous for white, I think. This is actually the result of not only this queen d3, but the combination of playing e5 and queen d3, and I think that was not very good. Let's return, because your opponent didn't play c5, he played a6, And well, the idea perhaps of your opponent was that he wants to play c5 without white playing queen to b5 or knight to b5, something like that. Now you cancel king side, and he plays c5 indeed. You play now knight to e2, correct move I think, and you write in your own commentary that coming out of the opening you were reasonably happy with your position. Your pieces are well developed and you don't have any obvious structural weakness, since your pieces are well positioned for kingside attack, and you thought that you would have good chances. Well, there are no structural weaknesses except for this center that is being attacked. If black takes on d4, you take back with the pawn, with the knight, I'm sorry. Oh, that's actually what happened in the game, so let's move it like this, and then knight to c6. We see that this pawn on e5 could become weak later. Actually, here you don't have much choice than to trade this knight on c6. You could defend by rook f to e1, but well, it's not really what you want with white to keep defending. And this knight is also threatening perhaps later to go to b4, perhaps rook to c8 first and then threatening knight to b4, things like that. So you take here on c6, and he retakes, of course. And now you continue with c3. At this point I find that black has quite a nice position, I must say. If he can advance the c-pawn, he has control over the center squares. This pawn here is something to keep defending. So he could try to maneuver bishop d8, bishop c7 to put more pressure on e5. Yeah, I don't think black is worse here. I think black has quite a nice position, and the attack on the king side that white wanted to start is not there yet. There is more to happen before there are real threats on the king side. But let's continue with the game, because later it did become interesting, and you did get an attack on the king side. Rook a to b8 now, attacking the b2 pawn, so you play b6, b3, I'm sorry. Now queen to b6, and now g5. So now this is the correct reaction. I mean, you see that in the center there's nothing to look for white. On the queen side, nothing again. So we need to be active on the king side. And the only way is advancing this pawn, so we can create some weaknesses on black's defense and then try to attack. Rook f to c8 now. h4, correct. Rook a8, what a strange move. What does he want? Does he want to use the queen and without the a6 pawn dropping? I think that must have been the reason, but it's such a strange thing to first play rook a to b8 and then return the rook back to a8. It looks like your opponent doesn't really know what to do and how to continue. What would have been better than this? Could he reroute the knight to f8 and g6 perhaps? Is c5 an option already? That could be. Or perhaps this idea of knight f8, knight to g6, attacking the bishop and the pawn on h4. Bishop can go to g3. It's an idea. I'm not sure. It's not very clear. Perhaps c5, just looking for play on this side, is the best thing to do. Or knight to c5. Knight to c5. Where's the queen going? Queen c2. Yeah. a5, a4 perhaps. That could be a plan. Yeah, I think he can get some play going on here. Well, let's go back to the game, because what he did was this strange move, rook a8. You played h5, consistently continuing your attack on the king side. I like that very much. Now he makes a bad move here. He plays g6, and that helps white a bit, because now you are going to start looking for ways to attack. Perhaps you need to place your bishop on g4 and then take on g6, so he cannot take with the f pawn, but because then e6 falls, and if he takes with the h pawn back, then you can play king to g2 and double up the rooks on the h file. Now things start getting interesting and attractive for white, and you did it in another move order. You didn't take first on g6, you played king to g2 already, preparing to attack over the h file. He plays queen to c7 now, attacking your pawn on e5. That is indeed the weakness, the weak point, e5. Rook a to e8, defending. a5, rook h1, king to g7, bishop to g4. This is, I think, this is correct what you're doing. You're placing the pieces on the correct squares to prepare an attack, because g6 and e6 are going to be interesting if the attack continues. Also, bishop g4 helps you to bring the queen to the king side, to the h file. So rook to h8 is a very logical defensive move. He wants to control the h file. The counterpart of this move is, of course, that at some point you are going to play h6 check, and the rook on h8 is going to be trapped there in the corner without being active. Queen h3, and now he plays knight to c5, and you write here some comment. You write that it was not until he played knight to h5 that I noticed the weakness of my pawn on g5. Yeah, I can imagine that when you're advancing the h-pawn, you don't think about leaving this g5 pawn perhaps insufficiently defended, so this knight is going to e4 to attack again here on g5. Well, at the same time, you write also that you thought that you after sacrificing your rook on e4, if you place knight e4, rook takes e4, then you would have enough compensation. Yeah, I think so. I think you would have enough compensation, because after h6 you lock this rook on h8. It's completely locked in there, and it's not participating in the game. Let's continue. Rook e3. Rook e3. What's the idea behind rook e3 exactly? Let me return. There is no really way of immediately attacking. Taking, then he takes. If you advance, he goes to f8. You don't have any sacrifice here. Yeah, it's difficult to find something here. Rook e3, knight e4, and now queen h4. Defending g5. Why not sacrificing on e4? I mean, that's what your idea was. When you saw him playing knight c5, you write already that you were thinking about this exchange sacrifice. You did sacrifice it later in the game, but I think it already would have worked. Let's see. Rook takes, pawn takes, h6, king f8. And now queen e3, defending g5, and actually this gives you more or less the same idea as in the game, with the difference that your queen is better placed on e3 than on h4. It's more active here. I mean, let's return so I can put the position in the game that was played. Queen h4 was played, queen to d8, now h6, king f8, and now the sacrifice. Now the difference is that now this queen on h4 doesn't have much play. If this queen would be on e3, it would be much more centralized and with many more squares to go and to move. So I think it would have been better. Now rook to d1, attacking the queen. The queen goes to c7. Rook d4. King e8. This is the start of a, well, strange plan of your opponent. He wants to liberate his rook, and the only way to do that is to bring the king towards the queen side so that rook can move. He plays rook d8 and then rook d5, I believe, to move his king to c8. But the thing is that his queen side is also not very safe, so bringing the king to c8 is asking white to attack on the other side and go there, and that's what happened in the game. Queen g3 was played now. Rook d8, rook takes e4, king d7, queen e3. That's the place to be for your queen. King to c8. Bishop f3. Good. You have now a very promising position. The square, the pawn on c6 is a weakness. He doesn't have a light square bishop. He doesn't have a knight. So there is no light piece that can defend c6. So rook c4 is coming, threatening rook takes c6. He plays rook to d5. You play rook to c4. And now he decides that it's better to sacrifice the exchange, playing this rook to d8 and allowing you to take on d5. I think it's a good decision by black. Still, after bishop takes d5, rook takes d5, I still find that white is white is better, I think. I mean, if it would be an endgame, let's say there wouldn't be any queens and any rooks on the board, then it would be a better endgame for black, because your pawns are on dark squares and this could be a weakness and this could be a weakness. But it's not an endgame yet, it's a middle game. And then we must look at other things, like the position of the kings, and his king is very vulnerable here in this open space, and c6 still is a weak square. What now happened is the result of time trouble and stress. You played on the 40th move, the move where the time control happens, this move, rook to d4. And he replied, bishop to c5, and suddenly everything collapses. There is now such a turnaround. It's not longer white having the threats, it's black winning here. You decided to resign here, and well, yeah, I think there is no really a good chance for white to come back into the game after after you lose this exchange on d4. And in that sense, I understand that you resigned. You also write that you resigned, well, because of this feeling of having giving away the position. That's the emotional part of chess, yeah. instead of rook to d4, you write in your own commentary that queen to e2 would have been a very good move. Yeah, it is, absolutely, with the idea of later going to a6, attacking. So white still has a better position here. Yeah, it's a sad end of the game, since actually black succeeded in his idea of trying to play solid, safe, without taking much risks. Well, kind of very game with a play with almost no creativity by black, but he waits until you make a mistake, and unfortunately you did make the last mistake of the game, so you lost. Well, what can I say? I do like the way, the style of your play. You do prepare an attack and you try to consistently continue attacking, looking for ways to continue the attack. At the correct point you sacrifice the exchange. Perhaps it could have been possible a few moves earlier, so then your queen wouldn't have been on h4 but on e3. It's even better for white, I think, but you do have this correct mentality in the middle game to look for activity and look to improve the pressure against your opponent. So if you continue developing this, and you try to find ways of calming yourself so you don't get to a too high stress level in time trouble, then it would be very, very helpful for you, I think. And one last thing that I want to say is that if you look at Grandmaster games at very high level, we see the same thing happening. Also, they get into time trouble, and also they sometimes blunder in time trouble. Many times they are able to concentrate and stay calm in time trouble and still play very good chess, but sometimes they also go wrong. It's a human thing, and we must try to do our best to stay in control of everything, but we are not superhumans. We're just amateur players who try to play as good as possible, and that's what keeps challenging us to study chess and practice chess. Well, I think I've said enough about this, so I'm going to say goodbye now, and I wish you lots and lots of success in chess, and perhaps till next time. Goodbye. Thank you.